The shriek of tires on wet asphalt ripped through the night before my mind could process what my eyes were seeing. A black sedan spun like a dying animal across the bridge ahead, smashed through the guardrail, and plunged nose first into the river below. For 3 heartbeats, I just sat there on my idling delivery bike, frozen, my breath trapped somewhere between my lungs and my throat. The taillights glowed red beneath the surface, sinking fast, and then something inside me snapped into motion. I kicked the bike stand down, my hands already fumbling with my helmet strap. The November wind cut through my thin courier jacket as I ran toward the broken railing. The river churned below, dark and furious. My pulse hammered in my ears as I kicked off my boots and shrugged out of my jacket. This was stupid. I should call someone. The car was disappearing. I jumped. The cold punched the air from my chest. My limbs locked up for a terrifying second before survival instinct kicked in and I started kicking, pulling myself deeper. The water was shockingly clear, illuminated by streetlights above and the car's dying headlights below. Bills floated past my face. $100 bills, drifting like strange fish through the current. Then I saw him. A man slumped forward against the steering wheel, his black hair floating like ink in water. Blood seeped from a gash on his temple, creating delicate red ribbons in the current. His eyes were half open, mouth slack, and his wrists. My stomach dropped. His wrists were bound to the steering wheel with zip ties. Thick industrial ones, cutting deep into his skin. This wasn't an accident. My lungs burned, screaming for air, but I forced myself closer. I grabbed the door handle and yanked. Locked. I pounded on the window with my fist, then with my elbow, panic rising like bile in my throat. The car tilted suddenly, sinking faster, and the man's eyes snapped open. Gray, sharp, terrified. He was drowning. I kicked back to the surface, gasping, choking on river water. On my bike, strapped to the frame, was the tire iron I kept for flat repairs. I grabbed it and dove again, my arms and legs already aching from cold and exertion. I swung the iron at the driver's side window with everything I had. The glass spiderwebbed, then shattered. Water rushed into the car. I reached through the jagged opening, slicing my forearm on broken glass, and grabbed the man's shoulder. His body jerked, convulsing, and bubbles streamed from his nose and mouth. I hooked my other arm through the window and used the tire iron to saw frantically at the zip ties around his wrists. The car groaned, metal shrieking as it dropped deeper. The first tie snapped, then the second. I grabbed him under the arms and pulled. He was heavy, dead weight, and for one horrible moment I thought we were both going to die down here. But then his body came free, slumping against me, and I kicked off from the sinking car with the last of my strength. We broke the surface together. I sucked in air, coughing and gasping, my arms locked around the man's chest as I struggled toward the rocky shore. He wasn't moving, wasn't breathing. I dragged him through the shallows and up onto the concrete embankment, collapsing beside him. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely position them correctly on his chest. I locked my fingers together and started compressions, counting under her breath. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. My wet hair hung in my face. River water and blood dripped onto his soaked dress shirt. "Please," I whispered. "Please don't be dead." On the second round of rescue breaths, he convulsed. Water erupted from his mouth as he choked and coughed, his body curling onto its side. He was alive. In the distance, I heard sirens. Someone must have seen the crash. Help was coming. But then the man's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. His grip was weak, but desperate. His eyes, those sharp gray eyes, locked onto mine with an intensity that made me freeze. "No," he rasped, voice barely audible. His accent twisted the syllables, thick and urgent. "No police, no hospital." I stared at him, at the blood still seeping from his temple, at the raw, bleeding wounds on his wrists where the zip ties had cut deep. And then my eyes dropped to his open jacket, to the leather shoulder holster strapped across his ribs, to the gun secured inside it. My breath caught. The sirens were getting closer, red and blue lights already strobing against the low clouds. The man tried to sit up, grimaced, and fell back with a stifled groan. His hand tightened on my wrist, and this time I saw it clearly. The fear in his eyes wasn't fear of dying. It was fear of being found. My heart was a drum in my chest. I didn't know this man. Didn't know why someone had tied him to a steering wheel and sent him into a river to drown. Didn't know why he carried a gun or why the thought of police made him look more terrified than drowning did. But I knew what happened to witnesses in situations like this. People who saw too much didn't live long. "All right," I heard myself whisper. "No hospital." The man's eyes closed in relief, his grip on my wrist loosening. His head lolled to the side, unconscious again. Headlights swept across the bridge above. Voices shouted. Flashlight beams danced across the water. I had maybe 30 seconds before first responders swarmed the area. I grabbed the man under his arms and started dragging him toward the footpath that led up to where I'd left my bike. Every muscle in my body screamed. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, and muscular beneath the soaked designer suit. I slipped twice on wet rocks, nearly dropping him, but somehow made it to the top of the embankment. My car, my beat-up sedan that I used for big delivery orders, was parked nearby, at the usual turnout where I always finished my route before calling it a night. Somehow I got him to my car and wrestled him into the passenger seat. He slumped against the window, leaving a smear of blood on the glass. My hands shook as I buckled him in. A flashlight beam swept across the bridge behind us. I slammed the passenger door, ran around to the driver's side, and started the engine. I pulled away from the curb with my headlights off, merging into the sparse late-night traffic just as emergency vehicles screamed past in the opposite direction. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the steering wheel. In the passenger seat, the man I'd pulled from the river breathed in shallow, rattling gasps. Blood dripped onto my upholstery. River water pooled beneath him. And I realized with cold, creeping certainty that I'd just made either the biggest mistake of my life or saved it. I couldn't tell which yet. Welcome back, my beautiful souls and kindred spirits. Before we start, go ahead and subscribe, like, and share where you're watching from. It always warms my heart to see our little storytelling family stretch across the world. Every click, every comment, every bit of love you give helps us keep uncovering these unforgettable stories together. So find your quiet place, settle in, and let me take you somewhere you've never been before. 20 minutes later, I pulled into the gravel driveway of the tiny bungalow I rented on the outskirts of the city. My hands were still shaking. The man. I'd seen the name on his expensive watch face when I'd checked his pulse. I hadn't moved since I'd buckled him in. His head rested against the window, breath fogging the glass in irregular patterns that at least confirmed he was still alive. Getting him inside was a nightmare. He was dead weight, his expensive suit soaked through and clinging to a body that was all lean muscle and sharp angles. I got my shoulder under his arm and half dragged, half carried him up the 2 concrete steps to my front door. Inside, the living room was exactly as I'd left it that morning. Small, modest. The second-hand couch with the faded floral pattern my landlord had included. Everything in my life fit into 900 square feet of rented space, and now I was dragging a man with a gun and designer suit into the center of it. I lowered him onto the couch as gently as I could. He groaned, a sound that came from somewhere deep in his chest, but his eyes didn't open. Blood had dried in dark streaks down the side of his face. The zip-tie marks on his wrists were raw and seeping. I stood there for a moment, dripping river water onto my floor, staring at the unconscious stranger I'd just committed a felony for. My courier jacket hung heavy on my shoulders. My whole body ached. I stripped out of my wet clothes in the bathroom, toweled off with shaking hands, and pulled on sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt. In the mirror, my reflection looked haunted. My brown skin was ashen underneath, my natural hair plastered to my skull. The cut on my forearm from the car window was still bleeding. I wrapped it quickly with gauze from under the sink and went back to the living room. He hadn't moved. I knelt beside the couch and checked his pulse again. Steady, stronger than before. I peeled back his jacket carefully, revealing the shoulder holster and the gun secured inside it. My stomach clenched. I'd never touched a gun before. Didn't want to start now, but I couldn't leave it on him. The holster's buckle was slick with river water. My fingers fumbled with it twice before it came free. I set the entire rig on the coffee table, as far from the couch as possible, and turned my attention to his injuries. The head wound was the worst. I grabbed my first aid kit and got to work. Cleaning the gash required pulling his head into my lap, tilting his face toward the lamplight. His skin was cold under my fingers. Pale. I could see the shadow of his pulse beating in his throat. His features were sharp even in unconsciousness. High cheekbones, a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled. There was a scar along his jawline, old and faded, that made me wonder what kind of life he'd lived before tonight. His eyes snapped open without warning. I jerked back, nearly dropping the gauze. Those gray eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that stole my breath. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then his hand shot up and caught my wrist, the same desperate grip from the riverbank. "Where?" His voice was rough, barely above a whisper. "My house," I said quickly. "You're safe. I didn't call anyone. You asked me not to." His gaze swept the room, cataloging everything. When his eyes came back to me, something in them had shifted. Calculation replacing panic. "You should have left me." His accent wrapped around the words, making them sound almost lyrical despite their weight. "You would have died. Better than this." I pulled my wrist free, anger flaring hot in my chest. "I just dragged you out of a river, saved your life, broke about 6 laws getting you here. The least you could do is not act like I made a mistake." His expression didn't change, but something flickered behind those eyes. Pain, maybe. Or recognition. "You don't understand what you've done. Then explain it to me." Before he could answer, headlights swept across the front windows. Bright, too bright. My heart stopped. I moved to the window and looked out through the gap in the curtains. 2 black SUVs sat in my driveway, engines running. As I watched, 4 men got out. They moved with the kind of precision that made me think of soldiers, and they were heading straight for my door. Oh God. I turned back to him. "Who are they?" His face had gone even paler. "Mine." "Your what?" "My men." He tried to sit up, grimaced and fell back. "You need to run. Now." But it was already too late. A knock sounded at the door. Not loud, almost polite. Except there was something about it that made every instinct I had scream danger. I crossed to the door on legs that felt like water. "Who is it?" "Miss Franklin." The voice was smooth, cultured. "We're here about the incident on the bridge. We know you have someone inside who needs medical attention." My blood ran cold. They knew my name. They knew I'd been at the bridge. They knew everything. "I don't know what you're talking about," I called through the door. "Please open the door, Miss Franklin. We're not the police." That's what scared me. I looked back at him. He was watching me, his expression unreadable, and he gave a single, small nod. Permission or warning, I couldn't tell which. I opened the door. The man on my doorstep was younger than I'd expected. Maybe 30, with sharp features and eyes that smiled even when his mouth didn't. Behind him, 3 other men stood in formation, their jackets unbuttoned in a way that suggested easy access to whatever they carried underneath. "Miss Franklin," the young man said, bowing slightly. "My name is Jay. I'm Mr. Nam's associate. I apologize for the intrusion at this late hour." "Mr. Nam?" "The man you pulled from the river." Jay's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We've been looking for him all evening. Imagine our relief when we tracked him here." Tracked. The word sent ice down my spine. Jay crossed to the couch where he lay, his expression shifting to something that might have been concern. He said something in Korean, rapid and low. The man responded in the same language, his voice weak but firm. Whatever he said made Jay's eyes snap to me. "You saw the restraints," Jay said. "It wasn't a question." My mouth went dry. "I saw him drowning. I cut him free." "Did you see who put them there?" "No, it was just him in the car." Jay studied me for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket. My heart stopped and pulled out my courier bag. The one I'd dropped on the bridge. "You left this behind." I took the liberty of looking inside. "Your license, your delivery receipts." He set the bag on my coffee table, right next to the gun. "You have a sister, don't you? Maya. Sophomore at State. Scholarship covering tuition, but you work doubles to cover her housing." Terror, hot and sharp, cut through my chest. "Don't you dare." "I'm not threatening you, Miss Franklin." Jay's voice was perfectly calm. "I'm explaining your situation. You saw something tonight. You know something. That makes you valuable. And valuable things need to be protected." "I don't know anything. You know Mr. Nam was meant to drown in that river. You're the only witness to that fact." Jay picked up my car keys from where I'd dropped them on the side table. You saw what you shouldn't have. Now you belong to us. The words hit like a physical blow. I looked at him, expecting contradiction. But he just watched me with those unreadable gray eyes, his jaw tight. I saved his life, I said, hating how my voice shook. That's all I did. And we're grateful, Jay gestured to one of his men. But gratitude doesn't change reality. You're coming with us, mister. Nam needs proper medical care, and you need protection. There are people who would very much like to know what you saw tonight. And if I don't want to? Jay's smile never wavered. Then your sister Maya has a very unfortunate accident on her walk back from the library. She studies late on Tuesdays, doesn't she? Gets back to her dorm around 11? My vision went white at the edges. Every fiber of my being wanted to launch herself at this man. But I'd grown up in neighborhoods where you learned fast that violence only worked when you had power. And right now, I had none. Fine, I whispered. I'll come. The SUV's interior was all leather and tinted windows. I sat in the back, wedged between Jay and another man whose name I didn't know. He was in the front passenger seat, his head back, eyes closed. They drove in silence through the city, heading into the hills where the houses got bigger and the streetlights got farther apart. The house at the end was massive, all clean lines and enormous windows that glowed with warm light. Inside was worse. Marble floors, modern furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. My sneakers squeaked on the polished floor as Jay led me down a hallway to a bedroom that was bigger than my entire bungalow. You'll stay here tonight, Jay said. Someone will bring you dinner. Don't try to leave. The door closed behind him with a soft click. I heard the lock turn. I was a prisoner. The bedroom was beautiful in the way expensive things always were. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city. The bed was enormous, covered in white linens. There was an ensuite bathroom with marble countertops and a shower big enough for 4 people. I pulled out my phone. No service. They'd jammed it somehow. Dinner arrived an hour later, brought by a woman who didn't meet my eyes and didn't speak. I couldn't eat any of it. I didn't sleep. I lay on top of the covers, fully dressed, watching the city lights and thinking about zip ties and gray eyes. Morning came slowly. Around 9, Jay appeared. Mr. Nam is awake and would like to speak with you. They walked through the house. I tried to memorize the layout, but it was too much, too big. Jay led me to what looked like a study. Dark wood. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. And sitting behind the desk, looking like he hadn't nearly drowned less than 12 hours ago, was him. He'd showered, changed into fresh clothes, black pants and a crisp white shirt. The gash on his temple had been properly stitched and bandaged, but it was his eyes that caught me. They were sharper now, fully alert, and they tracked my movement with predatory focus. Miss Franklin, he said, his accent less pronounced than last night but still present. Please, sit. There was a chair across from his desk. I sat. I owe you an apology, he continued. What Jay said last night was crude, but not inaccurate. You are in danger because of what you witnessed. I witnessed you drowning. You witnessed an execution. He said it calmly, like discussing the weather. Someone in my organization decided I was more valuable dead than alive. They bound me to that car and sent me into the river to drown quietly. No gunshots, no evidence, just an accident. My hands tightened in my lap. Who? That's what I need to find out. He stood, moving around the desk. The restraints you saw are evidence of conspiracy, which means whoever ordered my death will want to eliminate anyone who can confirm they were there. Me. You. He leaned against the desk. I can offer you protection, money for your cooperation, and assurance that your sister will remain untouched. You mean I'm still a prisoner? Something flickered in his expression. You're an asset. There's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting. Before he could respond, the sound of gunfire shattered the morning. It was distant at first, outside the house, then closer. Glass exploded somewhere on the first floor. Men shouted in Korean. More gunfire, impossibly loud. He moved faster than I would have thought possible. He grabbed my arm and hauled me toward a door in the far corner. It opened onto a narrow service corridor. Go, he said, pushing me forward. Down the hall, service exit at the end. What about you? I'll be right behind you. I ran. Behind me, I heard him shouting orders, heard more gunfire. The corridor was dim, lined with pipes and wiring. My hands scraped against the walls as I ran. The service exit was exactly where he'd said. A plain metal door with a push bar. I hit it hard, and suddenly I was outside in a narrow alley. Smoke drifted from somewhere out of sight. Footsteps pounded behind me. I spun, expecting him, and found myself staring at a man I didn't recognize. Older, maybe 50, with a gun in his hand and blood on his shirt. His eyes locked on me. You. I backed up. My spine hit the wall. The courier girl! The man's voice was thick with rage. He raised the gun. You ruined everything. He was supposed to drown quiet. A shot rang out. The man stumbled, his gun dropping, and fell to his knees. Behind him, he stood in the doorway, his own weapon raised, his face utterly cold. He fired again, and the man collapsed. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. I'd never seen anyone die before. He lowered his gun and crossed to me. His hand caught my arm, pulling me away from the wall. We need to move, now. They ran through the alley and out onto a side street. A black car screeched to a stop. Not one of the SUVs. Something smaller. Jay was in the driver's seat. Get in, he shouted. He shoved me into the back seat and slid in beside me. Jay hit the gas before the door was even closed. Rivals? He asked. Yes, Jay said. They knew where we were. Someone tipped them off. His jaw tightened. He didn't look at me, but his hand was still on my arm, his grip firm enough to hurt. They drove for 20 minutes, taking turns at random, doubling back. Finally, Jay pulled into the underground parking garage of what looked like an abandoned factory. This will do for now, Jay said. We need to regroup. They got out. The garage was freezing. I wrapped my arms around myself. He noticed. He shrugged out of his jacket and draped it over my shoulders. It was warm from his body heat, and it smelled like expensive cologne and gunpowder. Thank you, I managed. He just nodded. Jay led them up a service staircase to the factory floor. It was massive, full of old machinery and broken windows. In one corner, someone had set up a makeshift living space. Cots, a camping stove, cases of bottled water. He sank onto one of the cots with a groan. Now that they'd stopped moving, the pain was catching up to him. His face had gone pale again, and there was fresh blood seeping through his shirt. You're hurt, I said. I'm fine. You're bleeding through your shirt. He looked down, seemed to notice the blood for the first time, and said something in Korean that was probably a curse. I knelt in front of him. Let me see. You don't have to. I watched someone die because of me 30 minutes ago. Let me do something useful. He studied my face for a long moment. Then he started unbuttoning his shirt. The injuries underneath were worse than I'd expected. Bruises covered his left side, deep purple and black. There were cuts from the broken window, some stitched, some still raw, and along his ribs, a gash that had definitely reopened. I found a first aid kit and got to work. My hands were steadier now. I cleaned the wound carefully, my fingers gentle on skin that was cold and marked with old scars. He watched me the entire time. Up close like this, I could see the exhaustion in his features, the way pain tightened the corners of his mouth. Why? He asked quietly. Why what? Why did you jump into that river? I didn't look up from my work. Because someone was drowning. Most people wouldn't. Then most people are cowards. His hand caught mine, stilling my movements. When I finally looked up, his eyes were unreadable. You saved me from the water. Now you save me from my own house. Why? I don't know, I said, and it was the truth. Maybe because once you save someone's life, you're responsible for it. His thumb brushed against my wrist, a touch so light I almost didn't feel it. But his eyes stayed locked on mine, and something in them made my breath catch. You should run, he said softly, while you still can. I think I'm already in too deep. His hand tightened on my wrist. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Jay cleared his throat from across the room and the spell broke. I finished bandaging his ribs in silence. That night, lying on a cot in the darkness, I stared at the ceiling and wondered how my simple life had shattered so completely in the space of 12 hours. Can't sleep again? His voice came from the darkness. I turned my head and found his silhouette against the broken windows. Just thinking. About? How much has changed? How I used to worry about making rent and now I'm worried about being killed. You can still walk away. No, I said softly. I really can't. Not anymore. He crossed to my cot and sat on the floor beside it, his back against the wall. Close enough that I could see his face in the ambient light but not touching. You did well today, he said. Better than most of my trained people would have. That's because your trained people think like criminals. I just think like someone who wants answers. Is that all you want? The question hung between them, loaded with meaning I wasn't sure I understood. I don't know what I want anymore, I admitted. Change isn't always bad, even when it comes from violence. Especially then. His voice was quiet. Violence strips away everything false. It shows you who you really are when there's no room left for pretense. I looked at him, at the sharp angles of his face, the shadows pooling in his eyes. Who are you? I asked. Really? A man who wanted peace and got war instead. A man who was supposed to drown in a river but keeps breathing because a courier decided he was worth saving. He met my eyes. I'm whatever you need me to be. And what do you need me to be? Alive, he said simply. I need you alive. The words settled between us, weighted with meaning neither of us was ready to examine. My heart beat too fast. I should let you sleep, he said, starting to rise. Stay. The word came out before I could stop it. Just for a little while. He settled back against the wall. They sat in silence, and I felt the tension in my shoulders slowly ease. I didn't know when I fell asleep. But when I did, I dreamed of silver eyes and river water, and the moment I'd decided to jump. They stayed in the abandoned factory for 3 days. Jay came and went, bringing food and updates and fresh clothes. My phone remained useless, jammed or blocked. Every morning I woke up on that uncomfortable cot, stared at the rust-stained ceiling, and wondered if Maya was okay. He recovered slowly. The color returned to his face, and the way he moved became less careful. But there was a tension in him now that hadn't been there before. He spent hours on encrypted calls, speaking rapid Korean to people I couldn't see. On the 3rd evening, as the sun set, he approached me. I need to tell you something. I looked up from the book Jay had brought me. Okay. He sat on the crate across from me. He'd rolled up his sleeves, and I could see the healing marks on his wrists from the zip ties. I'm offering you a choice, he said. A real one this time. I have money, resources. I can create new identities for you and your sister, send you anywhere in the world. You walk away from this, and you never have to look back. My heart jumped into my throat. You're letting me go? If you want. His eyes were steady on mine. You saved my life. You don't owe me anything else. It was everything I wanted. Freedom. Safety. But what happens to you? I asked. I find the traitor. I eliminate the threat. I survive or I don't. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. I set the book aside. Why did someone try to kill you? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I wanted to make peace. There's been a gang war brewing for months. It's been costing lives, civilian lives, not just soldiers. So I proposed a treaty. A division of territory that would satisfy everyone and stop the bloodshed. That sounds reasonable. It sounds weak. His voice was flat. In my world, compromise is weakness. Someone in my organization saw my proposal as betrayal. But you were trying to save lives. I was trying to save my soul. He looked at me then, and the pain in his eyes was raw. I've done terrible things, hurt people, ordered deaths. I wanted this one thing to be different. I understood then. This wasn't just about survival. It was about redemption. I'm not taking your offer, I heard myself say. His eyes sharpened. What? I'm not running. I'm staying. I took a breath. That man at the safe house. He said I ruined everything. Which means my saving you didn't just witness the conspiracy, it destroyed it. Someone spent time and money and planning to execute you perfectly, and I came along and wrecked the whole thing. That's why you're in danger. That's why I'm already involved. I leaned forward. You need to find the traitor, but you can't do it the way you normally would. Because if the traitor is smart, they're already covering their tracks. I know, but I can help. The idea was forming as I spoke. You said there are 6 suspects. They're not going to talk to you honestly. But me? I gestured to myself. I'm nobody, a courier. I know this city. I've been delivering packages to half these neighborhoods for 3 years. I know the shortcuts, the back alleys, the people everyone else ignores. You want to investigate my lieutenants. I want to help you find the truth. He stared at me. In the fading light, his features looked carved from stone. You'd risk your life for this? I'd risk my life for the truth. I met his gaze. And for the chance that maybe, if we find the traitor, you can still make that peace treaty happen. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite hope, but close. You're insane. Probably. But I already jumped into a river for you. The silence stretched between them. Finally, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He opened it carefully and handed it to me. 6 names were written in neat handwriting. Beside each name were details, positions, locations, areas of control. These are the people with access to my schedule and security, he said. The people who could have planned my execution. His finger moved down the list, stopping at the 4th name. This one. Do you recognize him? My blood went cold. Yes. I delivered to him twice a week for 6 months. Sensitive packages, always marked confidential. He controls the dock district. If someone wanted to frame the rival factions for my death, they'd need access to shipping manifests. His voice was carefully neutral. The packages you delivered. They were always sealed, but they were heavy, document heavy. And he always made me wait while he checked them, then gave me a sealed envelope to take back to. I trailed off, looking at him. To my office, I remember. His jaw tightened. You were a courier between him and my organization for months. If he's involved in the conspiracy, you're not just a witness to my execution. You're a witness to his logistics. The full weight of it settled on my shoulders. If you stay, he said quietly, you're not just helping me investigate. You're making yourself a target. Then we don't let him find out. I folded the paper and handed it back. You said you need someone overlooked, someone who can move through the city without raising alarms. That's what couriers do. We're invisible. You stopped being invisible the moment you pulled me from that river. To your world, maybe, but to the rest of the city, I'm still just a delivery girl on a bike. I stood, pacing to the window. I know how to disappear in plain sight, how to be somewhere without being seen. That's the skill you need right now. He was quiet for so long I thought he might refuse. Then, Jay won't like this. Jay doesn't have to like it. If I agree, you follow my rules. You wear a tracking device. You report in every hour. And if I tell you to run, you run. No questions. Deal. He stood and crossed to where I waited by the window. Up close, I could see the exhaustion still lingering in his features. You're either the bravest person I've ever met, he said, or the most foolish. Can't I be both? His mouth quirked. Not quite a smile, but close. I suppose you can. He extended his hand. I took it, his palm warm and calloused against mine. The handshake felt like a contract, sealed in blood and river water and the strange, fragile trust growing between us. We start tomorrow, he said. I'll have Jay create a cover identity for you. New phone, new credentials. You'll go back to courier work, but this time you'll be watching, listening, gathering information. And the other 5 names on the list? We investigate them all, one by one, until we find the traitor. His hand tightened on mine for just a moment before releasing. And when we do, I'll make sure they understand the price of betrayal. The bike felt familiar beneath me. I had forgotten how much I'd missed this. The freedom of movement, the wind against my face. Jay had procured me a bike identical to my old one, complete with the same delivery company logos. To anyone watching, I was just another courier weaving through morning traffic. Nobody important, nobody worth noticing. The tracking device in my left shoe pressed against my arch with each pedal stroke, a constant reminder that he was watching. The phone in my pocket vibrated every hour with his check-in messages. Brief. Professional. Status? My first assignment was simple. Return to my old delivery routes. Let myself be seen. Re-establish my presence. And watch. The city looked different now. What had once been familiar streets now felt full of eyes and shadows. Every suit-wearing businessman could be one of his enemies. Every parked car could be surveillance. My hand stayed steady on the handlebars, but my heart raced with each delivery. By noon, I'd completed 6 runs without incident. The 7th took me to the financial district, to a mid-rise office building I'd been to dozens of times before, and that's when I saw him. The councilman stood by the reception desk, speaking in low tones with a man in an expensive suit. He looked exactly as I remembered, mid-50s, graying at the temples, with the kind of face that smiled easily and meant nothing by it. He'd always been polite to me, tipped well, asked about my day in that generic way people did when they were trying to seem personable. Now, knowing what I knew, his pleasantness felt like a mask. I kept my head down, my courier bag slung over my shoulder as I approached the desk. The receptionist handed me a package and I signed for it without looking up. Olivia? My blood turned to ice. I looked up slowly. He was staring at me, his expression one of genuine surprise. Olivia Franklin? I thought you'd quit. Haven't seen you in over a week. Personal emergency, I said, keeping my voice light. But I'm back now. Good, good. You were always reliable. He glanced at the package in my hands. Still doing the downtown routes? Wherever they send me. Well, it's good to see you again. His smile was warm and entirely unsettling. Stay safe out there. You too, Councilman. I turned and walked to the elevator, every muscle in my body screaming at me to run. The doors closed. I descended alone, my reflection in the polished metal showing a woman who looked calm and composed and nothing like the terrified girl whose heart was trying to beat out of her chest. He'd seen me, spoken to me, confirmed I was alive. The moment I hit the street, I pulled out my phone and texted him. Compromised. He saw me. His response came in seconds. Location? I gave him the cross streets. What do I do? Complete your deliveries. Act normal. I'm sending backup. Normal, right. I climbed back on my bike and forced myself to pedal at a normal pace. Backup arrived in the form of Jay on a motorcycle, dressed like a bike messenger himself. He fell into position 2 blocks behind me, close enough to intervene but far enough to maintain cover. My next 3 deliveries went smoothly. But on the 4th, as I locked my bike outside a cafe in the arts district, I noticed something odd. The street vendor on the corner, an older man who sold newspapers and magazines, was someone I'd bought from dozens of times. Mr. Kim. He always had a smile for me. But today, as I approached to grab a bottle of water, I noticed something that made me pause. He was wearing an earpiece. It was subtle, flesh-colored, and barely visible beneath his cap. But I'd learned to notice details in the past few days, and this detail made alarm bells ring in my head. I bought the water anyway, making small talk about the weather. Mr. Kim was as friendly as always, but as I turned to leave, I caught the reflection in the cafe window. His hand had moved to his collar, a small gesture. Except there was something on his wrist that flashed in the sunlight. A communication device. My stomach dropped. I climbed back on my bike, pedaled around the corner, and immediately pulled out my phone. The vendor at 5th and Morrison, I texted him. Mr. Kim, he's wired. This time, the response took longer. When it came, it was a phone call. Describe everything, he said without preamble. I did, keeping my voice low as I coasted through a residential neighborhood. The earpiece, the wrist device, the way Mr. Kim had watched me a little too carefully. He gave you information before? He asked. Not formally, but he knew my routes. We'd chat sometimes about the neighborhood. My breath caught. He asked about you once. Silence on the other end. Then, when? About 2 months ago. He asked if I'd delivered to any of the clubs downtown. Said he'd heard they were under new management and wondered if I'd seen anything interesting. What did you tell him? Nothing. I said I didn't pay attention to client details. I turned onto a main street, my eyes scanning for tails. But if he's been gathering information on your organization through casual courier conversations, he's a professional, a wire, like you said. Probably working for whoever planned my execution. His voice was cold, which means you just identified a direct link to the conspiracy. What do I do? Nothing. Keep to your normal routine. I need you to go back there tomorrow. Same time, same route. Buy something from him again and see if he tries to feed you information. What kind of information? Anything about me, about my organization. If he's still active, he'll try to use you to verify I'm dead or to locate me if he suspects I survived. A pause. Can you do this? I thought about the councilman seeing me in that office building. About the way Mr. Kim's friendly smile suddenly seemed sinister. Yes, I said. I can do this. Good. Finish your deliveries and come back. We need to plan for tomorrow. The line went dead. By the time I returned to the factory that evening, the sun was setting. He and Jay were waiting in the makeshift command center they'd set up, a folding table covered in laptops and phones and photographs of the 6 suspects. He looked up as I entered. You did well today. I led the councilman right to you. How is that doing well? You confirmed he's monitoring your movements, which means he suspects you know something. And you identified a potential informant in your vendor. That's actionable intelligence. He gestured to the table. We ran a background check on Kim. He's not what he appears to be. Jay turned one of the laptops toward me. The screen showed a file with Mr. Kim's photo and details. But the name wasn't Kim. It was Park Jin-woo. And his resume included military intelligence training and 5 years working as a private investigator. He's a plant, he said. Positioned on your route specifically to gather information from couriers who service our operations. He's been there for 18 months, which means this conspiracy has been in motion longer than I thought. I sank into one of the folding chairs. How many others are there? How many people in my normal life are actually watching? We don't know yet, but tomorrow you're going to help us find out. He pulled up another file. When you buy from Kim, I want you to mention something specific. Say you heard there was an accident on the bridge last week. Act curious about it. See how he responds. You want me to bait him. I want you to give him an opportunity to reveal his agenda. And if he decides I'm a threat, then we'll know the councilman is preparing to move against you, and we'll act first. His eyes met mine. This is dangerous. More dangerous than jumping in that river. Once you do this, there's no going back. I'm already being watched. The councilman saw me today. This is different. This is you actively participating in the investigation. He leaned forward. You're stepping out of the role of innocent bystander into something much more complicated and dangerous. I thought about it. About the fear that had lived in my chest since the moment I'd pulled him from the water. About Maya. About my simple life that was already destroyed. I'm in, I said. Tell me exactly what to do. They spent the next 2 hours rehearsing. He played Kim, asking questions in different ways, teaching me how to deflect without seeming evasive. Jay provided tactical briefing, where he'd be positioned, what signals to use if I needed extraction. That night, sleep came easier. Maybe because exhaustion finally won. Maybe because having a purpose was better than feeling helpless. Morning came cold and clear. I dressed in my usual courier clothes, strapped the tracking device into my shoe, pocketed the encrypted phone. He watched me prepare with an expression I couldn't read. When I was ready, he crossed to where I stood by the door. Remember, he said quietly, you're not a spy. You're just a courier who saw something on a bridge and can't stop thinking about it. Curiosity, not suspicion. I remember. And if anything feels wrong, I signal Jay and get out. His hand moved as if to touch my arm, then stopped. The gesture was so unlike him, so uncertain, that it made my breath catch. Why did you really stay? He asked. The truth. I met his eyes. In the morning light, they looked less gray and more silver. Because I'm tired of being invisible, I said. My whole life, I've been the person nobody notices. And when I pulled you out of that river, I stopped being invisible. And I realized I don't want to go back to that. I'd rather be seen and terrified than invisible and safe. He studied my face for a long moment. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. You were never invisible to me. Before I could respond, he stepped back. The moment broke. I headed for the door. But I felt his eyes on me the entire way out, and the weight of his gaze felt like both a promise and a threat. The bike ride to 5th and Morrison took 20 minutes. Jay was already in position, though I couldn't spot him. Mr. Kim, Park Jin-woo, was at his usual corner, arranging newspapers. He looked up as I approached, and his smile was exactly as friendly as always. Olivia, good morning. Morning, Mr. Kim. I grabbed a bottle of water and fished cash from my pocket. Busy week? Always busy. He took my money, made change. You look tired. Working too many hours? Catching up. I had to take some time off last week. His expression shifted to concern. So natural. So practiced. Nothing serious, I hope? No, just... I hesitated, like I was debating whether to say more. Did you hear about that accident on the bridge? The car that went into the river? Mr. Kim's hands stilled for just a fraction of a second. Then he resumed arranging his papers. I heard something about it. Terrible thing. Did they find the driver? I don't know. I was nearby when it happened. Saw the whole thing. I opened my water, took a sip, kept my voice casual. It was strange. The car just spun out, like someone lost control. But the roads were dry. Maybe mechanical failure. Maybe. I paused. I wanted to help, but by the time I got down there, the car was already sinking. Emergency services showed up right after. I gave them my information but haven't heard anything since. Mr. Kim was watching me now with an intensity that didn't match his pleasant expression. That must have been frightening. It was. I keep thinking about it. About whether the driver made it out. I met his eyes. Do you know if they found anyone? I don't follow the news that closely. But I'm sure if someone needed help, they got it. His smile never wavered. You did what you could. That's all anyone can ask. I nodded, finished my water. Well, I should get going. Got deliveries to make. Stay safe out there. I climbed back on my bike and pedaled away, forcing myself not to look back. 2 blocks later, my phone buzzed. His message was brief. He touched his collar twice. Sent a signal. You did perfectly. Relief and terror flooded through me in equal measure. The rest of my deliveries passed in a daze. Every person I passed could be an enemy. Every conversation could be a trap. By the time I returned to the factory that evening, I was exhausted. Not physically. The deliveries had been light. But emotionally. He was waiting. He took one look at my face and poured me a glass of water from their bottled supply. Sit, he said. I sat. Kim reported to his handlers within minutes of you leaving. We intercepted the communication. He confirmed you were asking questions about the bridge incident and that you claimed to be a witness. His handler told him to maintain contact and extract more information. So it worked. It worked. But now they know you're curious. They'll be trying to determine if your curiosity is innocent or if you know more than you should. He sat across from me. Tomorrow, you don't go back to that corner. We let them wonder. Let them reach out to you. How will they do that? They'll send someone. Maybe Kim directly, maybe someone else. But they'll make contact. His eyes were steady on mine. And when they do, you tell them exactly what we've rehearsed. And if they don't believe me, then we extract you and move to the next phase. He paused. But they'll believe you, because you're telling them a version of the truth. The best lies always are. That night, lying on my cot, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if Maya was looking at the same sky. Can't sleep again? His voice came from the darkness. I turned my head and found his silhouette against the broken windows. Just thinking. About? How I used to worry about making rent and now I'm worried about being killed by conspiracy. You can still walk away. No, I said softly. I really can't. Not anymore. He crossed to my cot and sat on the floor beside it, his back against the wall. Close enough that I could see his face in the ambient light, but not touching. You did well today, he said. That's because I just want answers. Is that all you want? The question hung between us, loaded with meaning I wasn't sure I understood. Or maybe I did understand, and that's what scared me. I don't know what I want anymore, I admitted. Change isn't always bad, even when it comes from violence. Especially then. His voice was quiet. Violence strips away everything false. It shows you who you really are when there's no room left for pretense. And you are someone who jumps into rivers for strangers, someone who chooses truth over safety. I looked at him, at the sharp angles of his face, the shadows pooling in his eyes, the way he sat guard beside me like he was protecting something precious. Who are you? I asked. Really? A man who wanted peace and got war instead. A man who was supposed to drown in a river but keeps breathing because a courier decided he was worth saving. He met my eyes. I'm whatever you need me to be. And what do you need me to be? Alive, he said simply. I need you alive. The words settled between us, weighted with meaning neither of us was ready to examine. My heart beat too fast. His breathing was measured but tense, like he was holding himself back from something. I should let you sleep, he said, starting to rise. Stay. The word came out before I could stop it. Just for a little while. I don't want to be alone with my thoughts. He settled back against the wall. They sat in silence, the city breathing beyond the broken windows, and I felt the tension in my shoulders slowly ease. I didn't know when I fell asleep. But when I did, I dreamed of silver eyes and river water and the moment I'd decided to jump. And in the dream, he jumped with me, and they surfaced together, gasping and alive and bound by something neither of them could name. The meeting was set for midnight at a warehouse in the industrial district. I had completed my reconnaissance earlier that day, confirming the location, photographing entry points, memorizing exit routes. What I didn't report was the second warehouse 3 blocks east, the one with fresh tire tracks and recently disturbed dust patterns, the one that felt wrong in ways I couldn't articulate. I told myself it was nothing, told myself I'd mention it later. But the lie sat heavy in my chest as I dressed for the operation in tactical black that Jay had provided. He watched me prepare with that unreadable expression he wore like armor. He'd been distant since this morning, since Jay had confirmed communications with the councilman. The betrayal of his oldest friend was carving something out of him. You don't have to come, he said for the 3rd time. Jay and I can handle this. I'm the one who identified Kim. I'm the one he might talk to. I secured my hair into a tight braid. Besides, you might need a witness. Always thinking like a courier. Always looking for the proof of delivery. There was something in his voice. Not quite affection. Not quite warning. I turned to face him fully. In the dim light of the factory, he looked like a portrait of controlled violence. Black suit, hair swept back to reveal the healing scar at his temple. Eyes that held the kind of coldness that came before terrible decisions. Are you going to kill him? I asked. I don't know yet. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one I have. He crossed to me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive. He has been with me since we were 17, stood beside me when I took over the organization. If he's the one who tried to drown me, I need to know why before I decide what he deserves. And if his reasons aren't good enough, then I'll do what needs to be done. His hand moved to my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone with a gentleness that contradicted everything else. But you won't have to watch. I'll make sure of that. The touch lingered too long, burned too bright. I found myself leaning into it before I could stop myself. When I opened my eyes, he was already moving away, the moment fractured. They left in separate vehicles. Jay drove me in a nondescript sedan while he followed in one of the black SUVs. The warehouse district was exactly as I'd photographed it. Rows of identical structures, most abandoned. His friend was already there. I saw him through the gap in a side door, tall, broader than him, with silver threading through his dark hair. He stood alone in the center of the empty warehouse floor, hands in his pockets, looking relaxed in a way that made my instincts scream. Too calm. Too ready. He entered first, Jay flanking him. I stayed back as instructed, positioned near the door with a clear line of sight, but protected by shadows. I activated the camera pen in my pocket. Brother, his friend's voice carried in the empty space, warm and familiar. He opened his arms like he expected an embrace. He didn't move closer. Don't call me that. After all these years? You tried to kill me. His friend's smile never wavered. I tried to save you. There's a difference. The words hit like a physical blow. I saw his shoulders tighten, saw the micro-expression of pain that flashed across his face. Explain, he said. His friend began to pace. You were going to make peace with the Eastern Syndicate, a treaty that would divide territory, share resources, end the competition that's kept us strong for decades. You called it progress. I call it suicide. It would have saved lives. It would have destroyed everything your father built. His friend's voice gained intensity. Your father didn't raise you to be a peacemaker. He raised you to be a warrior, a king. And you were throwing it all away for what? A chance to sleep better at night? It wasn't fantasy. It was strategic. It was weakness. His friend's control cracked. And weakness in our world gets people killed. The moment you signed that treaty, it all would have collapsed. The rival factions would have seen it as surrender. I's breath caught. I understood now. His friend truly believed he was saving him. That the execution in the river was an act of mercy. He took a step forward. So you bound me to a steering wheel and sent me to drown. You made it look like an accident to protect the organization from my own stupidity. Is that the story you're telling yourself? I made it painless, quick. Better than what would have come if you'd lived to sign that treaty. His friend's eyes were bright with conviction. I've spent 15 years protecting you from yourself, brother. This was just the final act. Who helped you? His voice was deadly quiet. The councilman. He understood what was at stake. He provided the logistics, the cover story. The Eastern Syndicate was supposed to take the blame. It would have united our organization. Your death would have meant something. Jay moved then, a subtle shift that put him between them. But it was too late. His friend wasn't alone. The explosion of movement came from everywhere at once. Men emerged from the shadows. 6, 8, 10 of them, surrounding the warehouse floor in a practiced formation. My heart slammed against my ribs. This wasn't a confession, it was a trap. His friend's smile returned. I knew you'd survive somehow, but I also knew you'd come for answers, and I knew you'd bring her. His eyes found me in the shadows. I froze. The courier girl who ruined everything. His friend's voice carried across the space. The witness who saw what she shouldn't have. The woman who made you soft enough to trust, weak enough to love. He moved to block his friend's line of sight to me, but it was a futile gesture. Here's what happens next, his friend said, pulling a gun from his jacket. You give me the operational codes to the syndicate's accounts and territory controls. Every access point, every safe house, every alliance contract. And in exchange, I let her walk out of here alive. You're taking over, he said flatly. Someone has to. You've proven you can't be trusted with our legacy. His friend's gun remained steady, pointed at his chest. I'll finish what you couldn't. I'll crush the Eastern Syndicate. I'll make our organization untouchable the way it was meant to be. The rain hammered against the warehouse roof. My mind was spinning through possibilities. The panic button on my finger was useless. Jay had people outside, but they were outnumbered. His voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. If I give you the codes, you'll kill us both anyway. True. His friend's honesty was almost refreshing. But at least she'll die quickly. The same mercy I tried to give you. His expression softened. I don't want to hurt her, brother. She's innocent in all this. But her existence is proof of your weakness. So she has to die. The only question is whether you make it hard or easy. My hands clenched into fists. I thought about the tire iron I'd used to break that car window. About the fear I'd felt diving into dark water. About the choice I'd made then, and every choice since. To jump, to stay, to fight instead of flee. I wasn't going to die here. But before I could move, something crashed through the warehouse's north wall. Not an explosion. Something heavier. A vehicle. The headlights swept across the space, blinding his friend's men, and then the shooting started. Not from his people. From somewhere else entirely. Rival faction. Eastern Syndicate. The very people his friend had tried to frame were here, and they were here for blood. The warehouse erupted into chaos. I dropped to the ground as bullets sparked off concrete and metal. I crawled toward the side door, staying low, staying moving. Behind me, I heard him shouting orders in Korean, heard Jay returning fire. I made it to the door and burst through into the rain. The alley beyond was dark and slick, but I knew these streets. 2 blocks east was that second warehouse. I ran. Behind me, the gunfight raged, but I didn't look back. My boots splashed through puddles. The rain soaked through my tactical blacks. I rounded the corner toward the second warehouse and arms grabbed me from the shadows. A hand clamped over my mouth. I was lifted off my feet and dragged backward through a doorway I hadn't even seen. The door slammed shut. Darkness swallowed me whole. When the lights came on, I was bound to a chair in the center of an empty room. My wrists were secured with zip ties, industrial ones, just like the ones that had been on him in that sinking car. A figure stood in the corner, face obscured by shadows. Then he stepped forward into the light, and my world tilted sideways. It was Kim. The man I thought was just a vendor, just a contact. But he had never been small. He had been orchestrating everything from the start. I stared. This wasn't the man I expected. This was the face I saw every morning. "Mr. Kim," I whispered, the name catching in my throat. "Park Jin-woo." He smiled. A cold, final smile that was nothing like the friendly vendor I knew. An unnecessary alias, but yes, I apologize for the deception, Olivia. I stared at him. "It was you. The vendor, the wire, the mastermind." Lieutenant Kim pulled up a chair and sat across from me. He'd removed his suit jacket, rolled up his sleeves. "You're wondering how long," he said. "How long I've been planning this. How long I've been his right hand while sharpening the knife for his back." Lieutenant Kim leaned forward, his voice dropping to a chilling whisper. "I needed you to see me as harmless. People speak freely around men they underestimate." He tapped his chest. "The real architect? That was always me." The rain was a living thing against the warehouse windows, clawing at the glass. I tested the zip ties binding my wrists, tight enough to cut circulation, industrial grade like the ones I'd sawed through in that sinking car. The irony burned. Kim pulled up a chair and sat across from me with the ease of someone settling in for a long conversation. He'd removed his suit jacket, rolled up his sleeves. "You're wondering how long," he said. "How long I've been planning this. How long I've been his right hand while sharpening the knife for his back." I said nothing. Silence was sometimes the best response. Kim smiled like he knew exactly what I was doing. 5 years. That's how long I've been building the coalition that will replace him. His friend was useful. His loyalty made him easy to manipulate. The councilman provided the logistics. But the real architect? He tapped his chest. That was always me. Why? Because he is a romantic. A dreamer who thinks organized crime can be civilized, that violence can be controlled, that power can be wielded with mercy. Kim stood, began pacing. His father understood what he refuses to accept. That this world runs on fear, not respect. His peace treaty wasn't strategy, it was surrender. So you decided to drown him. I decided to remove an obstacle. His friend was supposed to handle it quietly. But then you happened. Kim stopped pacing, positioned himself directly in front of me. When you saw that car go into the water, when you kicked off your boots and jumped, did you think you were saving a life? Or did you think you were becoming a hero? The question landed like a slap. My jaw tightened. I didn't think, I just acted. Exactly. You acted without understanding consequences. And now your impulsive heroism has made you the most valuable piece on the board. The witness, the evidence, the woman he would burn the world to protect. He won't give you what you want. He will. Because you're not just a witness anymore. You're his weakness, his vulnerability. Kim's fingers trailed along the back of my chair. Do you know what the organization respects? Strength, ruthlessness, a leader who puts the collective above personal attachment. His father would have slit your throat himself if it meant protecting his empire. But him? He laughed. He will give me everything I ask for if it means you walk out of here alive. And then you'll kill us both anyway. Of course. But the order matters. The theater matters. Kim checked his phone. I've sent him your location, told him to come alone to the old dockyard at Pier 17. Told him I'd trade your life for the operational codes. He'll come. He'll comply. And when he hands over everything his father built, the entire syndicate will see what I've been saying all along, that he's not fit to lead. The drive to the dockyard took 20 minutes. I was thrown into the back of a van. Kim sat across from me, scrolling through his phone with casual detachment. Around us, 4 armed men maintained positions like they were transporting precious cargo, which, I supposed, they were. I was the bait. When they pulled me from the van, my boots splashed into puddles deep enough to soak through to my socks. The dockyard stretched before them, a maze of shipping containers and rusted cranes silhouetted against the night sky. Kim's men positioned me in the center of an open area between 2 container stacks. Bright industrial lights had been set up, creating a a circle of illumination surrounded by darkness. They cut the zip ties on my ankles but left my wrists bound. "He'll be here soon," Kim said, checking his watch. "He's never late." The sound of an engine cut through the rain. A single vehicle approaching. My heart lurched into my throat as a black sedan pulled into the edge of the light, headlights blazing. The driver's door opened. He emerged like violence wrapped in silk. He wore all black, turtleneck, slacks, leather jacket that gleamed with rain. No weapons visible, hands empty and open. But there was something in the way he moved that made him more dangerous unarmed than most men were with guns. He stopped at the edge of the lit circle. His gaze found me first. A quick assessment, checking for visible injuries, before moving to Kim. "Brother," Kim said warmly. "Thank you for coming." "Don't call me that." His voice was devoid of emotion. "You don't have the right." "Have I?" "I've secured your logistics for 5 years. I've neutralized external threats without your knowledge. All I'm asking for is the efficient, necessary path to leadership. You call it sentiment, I call it humanity. And that's why you're standing here, unarmed and alone, about to surrender everything for a woman you've known for a week." Kim gestured to me. "Look at her. She's terrified, bound, completely at my mercy. And you're going to give me everything because you can't bear the thought of her dying. That's not leadership, that's addiction." He took a step forward. Kim's men materialized from the shadows, rifles trained on him from 6 different angles. He stopped, hands still visible. "What do you want, Kim?" "I already told you. The codes. Full access to every asset. Your word means nothing. Then call it professional courtesy. I don't want to kill her. She's innocent. But her existence proves you're compromised. So she has to die. The only question is whether it's painful or peaceful." I watched his face. Watched the micro-expressions that flickered across his features. Rage, calculation, despair, and something else. Something that looked like resignation. He was going to do it. He was going to surrender his empire because Kim was right about one thing. He couldn't bear the thought of watching me die. "Don't," I said, my voice cutting through the rain. "Don't give him anything. I'm not worth." "Yes, you are." His eyes met mine, and the intensity in them stole my breath. "You're worth all of it." He reached into his jacket, every rifle tensed, but what he pulled out wasn't a weapon, it was a phone. He tapped the screen, pulled up files, began reading off codes in a voice that was steady and emotionless and completely broken underneath. Kim listened, typing everything into his own phone, a smile growing wider. This was it, the moment of complete victory. And that's when the dockyard exploded with gunfire. Not from Kim's men, not from him. From everywhere at once, rifles cracking from the container stacks, from vehicles that roared into the space with headlights blazing. The Eastern Syndicate had found them. Chaos erupted. Kim's men returned fire. I dropped to the wet pavement as bullets sparked off metal and concrete. I rolled toward the nearest container, using my bound hands to pull myself along. Someone grabbed my shoulder. I screamed, jerking away, and found myself looking up at him. His face was splattered with rain and something darker. His hands moved to the zip ties on my wrists, sawing at them with a knife. "Can you run?" he asked. "Yes." "Then run. East exit. Jay's waiting with a car." "What about you?" His eyes met mine, and in them I saw everything he couldn't say. Regret. Determination. A goodbye. "I'll be right behind you." He was lying. They both knew it. The zip ties snapped. My hands were free. I grabbed his arm. "We go together or not at all." "Olivia." "Together. Or I stay right here and we both die. Your choice." For a moment he looked like he might argue. Then a bullet shattered the container inches from my head, and the decision was made. He grabbed my hand and pulled me into the maze of shipping containers. They ran through a war zone. Gunfire echoed off metal. He moved like he'd memorized the dockyard layout, pulling me through turns and gaps I never would have seen. His hand was iron tight on mine, refusing to let go. Behind them I heard Kim shouting orders. Heard vehicles giving chase. They emerged into an open area between container rows, and that's when I saw it. An industrial crane with an operator's cab accessible via metal ladder. "Up," I said, pulling him toward it. "We go up." "That's a dead end." No, it's high ground. Trust me. They climbed. The ladder was slick with rain, each rung a gamble. My arms screamed from exertion, but I kept moving. He followed, his body shielding mine from below. The operator's cab was small, filled with controls and levers and a panel of switches I recognized. I'd watched crane operators work. My hands moved over the controls with sudden certainty. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Creating a distraction." I activated the emergency alarm, a siren designed to warn workers. The sound was deafening, cutting through gunfire and rain. They blazed to life, sweeping across the dockyard in blinding arcs. Below them, the gunfight stuttered. Kim's men and the Eastern Syndicate both reacted to the sudden sensory assault, temporarily blinded by lights that turned rain into sheets of silver. In that moment of confusion, I saw Jay's car roaring toward their position from the east entrance, exactly where he'd said it would be. But I also saw something else. Kim, standing in the open, his gun raised toward the crane, toward them. His face was twisted with rage, with the fury of someone watching their perfect plan disintegrate. He fired. The bullet shattered the cab's window. He shoved me down, covering my body with his own as glass rained over them. I felt him flinch, heard his sharp intake of breath, knew he'd been hit. "No," I whispered, my hands finding wet warmth on his side. "No, I'm fine." His voice was tight with pain. "Grazed. We need to move." They climbed down the ladder together, me supporting as much of his weight as I could. Each rung felt like an eternity. Blood dripped from his side, painting the metal ladder in dark streaks that the rain immediately washed away. Jay's car screeched to a stop at the ladder's base. The back door flew open. I half-carried, half-dragged him into the seat, climbing in after him. Jay hit the gas before the door was even closed. Behind them, the gunfight continued. But it was distant now, muted by rain and distance and the roar of blood in my ears. I pressed my hands against his wound, trying to staunch the bleeding. His face was pale, his breathing shallow, but his eyes stayed open, fixed on me with an intensity that made my chest ache. "You should have run," he said. "I don't run. Not anymore." My hands were shaking, covered in his blood. "We need a hospital." "No hospital. Safe house. Jay knows where." The safe house was 40 minutes away. A penthouse apartment in a building that looked like any other luxury high-rise. Jay pulled into the underground garage and helped me get him to the elevator. By the time they reached the top floor, his eyes were starting to close. "Stay awake," I commanded, my voice sharp with fear. "Look at me. Stay awake." "Bossy," he murmured, but his eyes focused on my face. "I like it when you're bossy." The penthouse opened into a space of steel and glass and money. I barely noticed. Jay directed me to a bedroom, and together they got him onto the bed. A medical kit appeared, professional grade. Jay worked with practiced efficiency, cutting away his blood-soaked shirt, cleaning the wound. The bullet had carved a furrow across his ribs but hadn't penetrated deeply. Painful, messy. Not fatal if they could stop the bleeding and prevent infection. I assisted, handing Jay supplies, holding pressure where he directed. My hands steadied as I fell into the familiar rhythm of crisis management. 3 hours later, the wound was stitched and bandaged. He was unconscious but breathing steadily. Jay had left to coordinate security, leaving me alone in the bedroom with the man I'd now saved twice from death. I sat in a chair beside the bed and watched his chest rise and fall. My clothes were still damp with rain and blood. My hands shook with delayed adrenaline. I'd come so close to losing him tonight. The realization hit me like physical force. I couldn't bear that, couldn't survive watching him die. Somewhere between the river and the dockyard, I'd stopped being able to imagine a world where he didn't exist, and that terrified me more than any of Kim's bullets had. Morning came through floor-to-ceiling windows that transformed the city into a canvas of gold and shadow. I had dozed fitfully in the chair beside his bed, jerking awake at every sound. Now dawn painted the penthouse in soft light, and his eyes were open, watching me with an expression I couldn't decipher. "You stayed," he said, his voice rough from pain and sleep. "Where else would I go? Anywhere. Away from me and the disaster I've brought into your life." I stood, moved to the window. The city spread below them. The same streets I'd navigated for 3 years, now transformed into something alien and dangerous. I could see the dockyard district from here, a smudge of industrial ugliness on the waterfront. Kim's still out there, I said. So is what's left of his friends' network and the Eastern Syndicate. You've got enemies on all sides now. I know. And I'm the witness who ties you to all of it. The proof that you're compromised. Kim was right about that. As long as I exist, as long as you care about me, you're vulnerable. She heard him shift in the bed, heard the sharp intake of breath that meant he'd moved too quickly. When I turned, he was sitting up despite the pain, his face set in lines of stubborn determination. Say what you need to say, Olivia. Jay told me you have resources, enough to create new identities for me and Maya. Send us anywhere. I wrapped my arms around myself. You should do that. Send us away. End my part in this before Kim or the councilman or whoever comes next decides to use me against you again. Is that what you want? Weeks, it would have been. Weeks ago, I'd wanted safety and simplicity. No, I heard myself say. It's not what I want. His eyes sharpened. Then what do you want? I turned from the window and crossed to the bed. My hands found his face, careful of the bruises, gentle on skin that had been through too much violence. He went very still under my touch. I want to finish what we started, I said. Find Kim. Find the councilman. Find everyone who thought drowning you in a river was acceptable. I want to help you rebuild your organization the way you wanted it, with peace treaties and strategic alliances. I want to prove that mercy isn't weakness. That's war, Olivia. That's years of danger and uncertainty. I know. My thumb traced the line of his jaw. But I'm tired of running. Tired of being invisible. You said violence strips away everything false, shows you who you really are. Well, this is who I am. Someone who chooses to fight instead of hide. Someone who stays. His hand came up to cover mine, pressing my palm against his face like he was trying to memorize the warmth. If you stay, I can't protect you from everything. Can't guarantee Maya's safety or yours. All I can offer is my word that I'll burn the world to ashes before I let anyone hurt you again. That's not romantic. That's terrifying. I know. But it's the only promise I can make and keep. I leaned closer, my forehead resting against his. They breathed the same air, shared the same space, existed in a moment that felt suspended outside of time. I could feel his pulse beating against my fingertips, steady and strong and alive because I'd pulled him from that river. Then I accept, I whispered. Your promises and your dangers and whatever war comes next. But I'm not just your witness anymore. I'm your partner. Equal stake, equal risk, equal say. Partners, he repeated, tasting the word. His hand moved to the back of my neck, fingers threading through my hair. I've never had a partner before. You can trust me. I've proven that, haven't I? You have. His eyes searched my face. But Olivia, once we do this, once you commit to this path, there's no going back to who you were. That person dies the moment you choose me over safety. She already died. In that river when I cut through your zip ties. I pulled away slightly, needing to see his full expression. So here's what I'm offering. I know this city. Every neighborhood, every shortcut, every person who moves goods and information through the shadows. You need someone who can navigate the spaces your organization can't reach. I'll be your intelligence coordinator, your eyes and ears. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something that might have been respect. You want to weaponize your courier skills. I want to use what I'm good at to help you win this war without becoming the monster Kim accused you of being. Strategic intelligence over brute force. It's how you wanted to rebuild anyway, isn't it? He was quiet for a long moment, his hand still tangled in my hair, his eyes calculating possibilities. Then slowly, deliberately, he pulled me closer until their lips were a breath apart. You're either the bravest person I've ever met, he murmured against my mouth, or the most foolish. You've said that before. I still haven't decided which. Neither have I. The kiss was inevitable. Had been since the crane when he'd covered my body with his own, since the dockyard when I'd refused to run without him, since the first time I'd met his eyes and seen something in them that looked like salvation. His mouth was gentle despite everything he was, careful despite the violence he contained. My hands fisted in the sheets beside him, anchoring myself against the vertigo of want and fear and need. This was crossing a line they couldn't uncross. His fingers traced down my spine, a question asked in touch instead of words. I answered by shifting closer, careful of his wound but unable to maintain distance any longer. The kiss deepened, became something that tasted like rain and gunpowder in desperate relief. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, his pupils were blown wide and his carefully controlled expression had cracked to reveal raw hunger underneath. "We shouldn't," he said, even as his hand tightened on my hip. "Probably not. You're injured. I'm injured. Half the city's criminal networks want us dead. I know. And you're still here. I'm still here." His laugh was low and rough. "What am I supposed to do with you, Olivia Franklin? Trust me. Use me. Let me help you fight this war the smart way." I pressed my palm over his heart, feeling it race. "And stop trying to protect me from choices I'm capable of making myself. That last one might be impossible." His hand moved as if to pull me closer, then stopped. The gesture was uncertain in a way that made my breath catch. "Why did you really stay?" he asked. "The truth." I met his eyes. In the morning light, they looked less gray and more silver. "Because I'm tired of being invisible," I said. "My whole life I've been the person nobody notices. And when I pulled you out of that river, I stopped being invisible. And I realized I don't want to go back to that. I'd rather be seen and terrified than invisible and safe." He studied my face for a long moment. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. "You were never invisible to me." Before I could respond, he stepped back. The moment broke. Jay was calling from across the room, ready with updates. But the weight of his gaze stayed with me, feeling like both a promise and a declaration. Jay returned with updates that turned the brief peace into urgency. Kim had vanished after the dockyard firefight. The councilman was in the wind, either dead or hiding. The organization was in chaos. "We need to consolidate power," Jay said, spreading maps across the dining table. "Call in every alliance, every favor, force the fence, sitters to choose before Kim can offer them a better deal." He studied the charts. I noticed he'd dressed in a fresh black suit despite the bandages underneath, but his hand found mine under the table, fingers lacing together. "What about the peace treaty?" I asked. "The one with the Eastern Syndicate. Is it completely dead?" Both men looked at me. "They just tried to kill us at the dockyard," Jay said carefully. "They tried to kill Kim and his people. We were collateral." I pointed to the map. "Look at their positioning. They hit his friend's network first, then tracked Kim to the dockyard. They're not after your leadership. They're after the conspiracy that tried to frame them. That's different." His eyes sharpened. "You think they'd still negotiate? I think they're in the same position you are. Bleeding resources in a war neither side can win cleanly. And I think if you approached them now, with evidence that Kim and his friend were the real architects, you might find them more receptive than before." Jay looked skeptical. "That's a massive risk." "It's also the last thing anyone would expect," I countered. "Which makes it strategically sound. Kim's counting on you to consolidate internally first. If you bypass that and go straight to the Eastern Syndicate with a treaty offer, you undercut his entire strategy." Silence fell. His thumb traced circles on my palm. "She's right," he said finally. "Kim and his friend both believed peace made me weak. But what if peace is the weapon that wins this war? What if ending the conflict frees up resources to crush the internal rebellion? We'd be fighting on one front instead of two. Or we'd be dead," Jay said bluntly. "That's possible." He met his lieutenant's eyes. "But I'd rather die trying to build something better than survive by becoming exactly what Kim accused me of being. Besides," his hand squeezed mine, "I have an expert navigator now. Someone who knows how to move through the city unseen." Understanding shifted Jay's expression. "You want her to make contact. I want her to do what she does best. Deliver a package. Only this time, the package is me and a treaty offer." I felt the weight of their attention. This was it. The moment where my new role became real. "I can do that," I said, my voice steady. "But I'll need detailed intelligence. Who makes decisions, who's reasonable, who might listen. And I'll need insurance. Proof this isn't a trap. The camera footage from the dockyard," he said immediately. "It shows Kim coordinating the attack, shows his friend's involvement. That's proof the conspiracy was internal. It exonerates the Eastern Syndicate. And it makes you look reasonable." I nodded slowly. "I deliver the footage first as a gesture of good faith. Then, If they respond positively, we set up a meeting. They'll try to kill you, Jay said flatly. Not if I go alone. Not if I present myself exactly as I am. A courier who happened to record something important. I pulled up a map on my phone. I know their territory. Delivered there dozens of times. I blend in there. That's my advantage. He was watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. You understand this could get you killed. I understood that the moment I pulled you from that river. I met his eyes. But I need to know you'll let me do this my way. No hidden security teams. No backup plans. I walk in alone, deliver the message alone, walk out alone. That's the only way they'll believe it's genuine. That's asking me to watch you walk into danger without any way to protect you. That's asking you to trust me the way I've trusted you. The silence was heavy. Finally, he nodded once, sharp and decisive. All right, we do it your way. But you wear a tracker, and if you're not out in 2 hours, I'm coming in. Deal. They spent the rest of the day planning. Jay pulled files on the Eastern Syndicate's leadership. The head was a woman named Li Mei, 45, who'd inherited control from her father. Her second in command was someone called Mikhail, a former Russian enforcer. Mikhail's your best point of contact, Jay said. Li Mei won't meet with you directly without verification, but Mikhail handles initial negotiations. If he believes the footage is genuine, he'll escalate. If he doesn't, he'll kill you quietly. Encouraging, I muttered, studying Mikhail's photo. He looked like violence incarnate. Scarred, hard-eyed. He moved beside me, his presence a physical weight. Mikhail respects boldness, hates manipulation. Be direct with him. Show him the footage. Explain your reasoning. Let him make his own assessment. You sound like you know him. We've negotiated before. Small things. Territory boundaries, trade routes. He's brutal but honorable. If he gives his word, he keeps it. His hand found the small of my back. But he's also paranoid. He'll search you, scan for weapons and wires. Don't resist. Show him you have nothing to hide. By evening, I had a complete profile, a route mapped, and a thumb drive containing the edited dockyard footage. The sun set in shades of crimson and gold. I dressed in my courier clothes, worn jeans, company jacket. I strapped the tracking device into my boot and tucked the thumb drive into a sealed delivery envelope. He watched me prepare with an expression that might have been agony barely contained. I could still send someone else, he said quietly. This has to be me. Because I'm the only one who can walk in there without the weight of your organization behind them. You're not uninvolved anymore. They don't know that. He crossed to me, hands framing my face with a gentleness that contradicted everything he was capable of. If something happens to you, if Mikhail decides you're a threat instead of a messenger, I will tear the Eastern Syndicate apart brick by brick. I will become exactly the monster I've been trying not to be. Do you understand? I understand. I covered his hands with mine. But I also understand that this is the only way to end this war without becoming that monster. So trust me. He pulled me into an embrace that felt like goodbye. His face buried in my hair, his breathing unsteady. When he finally let go, his eyes were bright with emotion he refused to name. Come back to me, he said. It wasn't a request. It was a command wrapped in vulnerability. I will. I left the penthouse alone. Took the elevator down alone. Climbed onto the courier bike and rode into the city alone. The tracking device felt like both an anchor and a lifeline. The Eastern Syndicate's territory was industrial and working class, full of warehouses and small manufacturing businesses. I navigated with practiced ease, becoming just another courier making evening deliveries. The address Jay had given me was a shipping warehouse near the waterfront. I parked my bike 2 blocks away and approached on foot, the delivery envelope clutched in my hand. The warehouse's front entrance was locked, but a side door stood slightly ajar, an invitation or a trap. I took a breath, reminded myself that fear was just information, and walked through. The interior was cavernous and dim, lit by scattered work lights. My boots echoed on concrete. I could feel eyes watching from the darkness. I have a delivery, I called out, my voice steady. For Mikhail, from someone interested in ending a war. Movement in the shadows. Then a figure emerged, and I recognized Mikhail from the photos. He was bigger in person, his scarred face expressionless. Who sent you? His accent was thick, Russian vowels twisting English words. Someone who wants you to see evidence before more blood gets spilled. I held up the envelope. I'm just a courier. I don't take sides in wars that aren't mine. But the person who sent this thinks you deserve to know the truth about what happened on that bridge 2 weeks ago. Mikhail gestured, and 2 men materialized. They searched me with professional thoroughness, checking my clothes, my boots, scanning for electronics beyond the tracking device they found and removed. They took my phone, my keys, left me standing with nothing but the envelope. Mikhail approached, took the envelope, examined the seal. Why should I trust this? Because the person who sent it has nothing to gain from lying to you. Because the real enemy isn't each other. It's the people who tried to frame you. I met his eyes. Open it or don't. But if you watch what's on that drive and still think your war is with the man who sent me, then you're not as smart as he said you were. Something flickered in Mikhail's expression. Amusement or respect. He opened the envelope, removed the thumb drive, and gestured toward a laptop set up on a nearby crate. They watched the footage together. I had seen it before, but watching Mikhail's face as he absorbed what the dockyard cameras had captured was its own education. I saw the moment he recognized Kim, saw understanding dawn, saw rage tighten his features when the implication became clear that he and his organization had been set up. When the footage ended, Mikhail was silent for a long time. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call in rapid Russian. I caught Li Mei's name, caught words that might have meant evidence or conspiracy. The conversation lasted 3 minutes. When it ended, Mikhail looked at me with something approaching respect. Li Mei wants to meet the courier brave enough to walk into our warehouse alone, and she wants to meet the man who sent footage that could have been used against us but was shared instead. He paused. This is genuine good faith gesture, rare in our business. So you'll consider peace? We'll consider talking about peace. Big difference. Mikhail handed back my phone and tracking device but kept my keys. You come back tomorrow, same time, with the man who sent you. Li Mei will arrange neutral meeting place. We talk. We see if peace is possible. And if it's a trap, then we're all idiots who deserve what happens. Mikhail's scarred face might have held a smile. But I don't think it's trap. I think you're exactly what you appear to be. Courier who saw something she shouldn't and decided to do something stupidly brave. That kind of courage is usually genuine, too dumb to be fake. I wasn't sure if that was an insult or a compliment. I accepted my phone and tracking device, noted the absence of my keys, and turned to leave. Mikhail's voice stopped me at the door. Tell your boss he's either brilliant or suicidal. Maybe both. Tell him Li Mei respects the gesture, but respect doesn't guarantee survival. And tell him, he paused. Tell him his father would be proud. Old man always wanted peace, just never lived long enough to achieve it. The words hit me like an unexpected gift. I nodded once and walked out into the night. 20 minutes later, one of the black SUVs pulled up beside me. The door opened, and he emerged like he couldn't wait for the vehicle to stop. He crossed the distance in 4 strides and pulled me into an embrace that stole my breath. Don't ever do that again, he said into my hair. Do what? My job? Terrify me. I pulled back enough to see his face. The mask had cracked completely, leaving only raw emotion, relief and rage, and something that looked dangerously close to love. They want to meet, I said, tomorrow night. Li Mei herself. They believe the footage is genuine and Mikhail said your father would be proud. He went very still. He said that? Word for word. For a moment I thought he might break. But then his training reasserted itself, the mask sliding back with visible effort. Then we meet, and we end this war the way it should have ended from the beginning, with words instead of bullets. His hand found my face, thumb brushing across my cheekbone. You did something impossible tonight. You walked into enemy territory alone and came back with hope. Stupidly brave, I offered, remembering Mikhail's words. I was going to say miraculous. They drove back to the penthouse in silence, hands linked. The city passed outside the windows. Streets I'd navigated for years, now transformed by the knowledge that I'd just negotiated a temporary ceasefire. The meeting with Li Mei was set for a waterfront restaurant that had closed for renovations. He and I arrived at midnight, accompanied only by Jay. The Eastern Syndicate matched their numbers: Li Mei, Mikhail, and a silent woman. Li Mei was smaller than I expected, elegant in a way that disguised the steel underneath. She wore a tailored suit and an expression of calculated interest. "Mr. Nam," she said in perfect English. "Thank you for the footage. It explained many things. Thank you for agreeing to meet." He moved with careful control, his wound hidden but present in the slight stiffness. "I apologize for the chaos my organization's internal conflicts have caused yours. Your apology is noted but unnecessary. Chaos creates opportunity. The question is whether that opportunity leads to continued war or to something more profitable." They sat at a table in the center of the empty restaurant, visible from all angles. I sat beside him, acutely aware that I was the only person at this table without decades of criminal experience. "I propose a territorial treaty," he began, pulling out maps. "Clear boundaries, shared interests in certain areas, non-aggression pacts. The war has cost both sides resources and lives without strategic advantage. Peace doesn't mean surrender. It means redirecting those resources." Li Mei studied the maps. "This is similar to the treaty your lieutenants tried to prevent, the one that led to your assassination attempt." "It is, because the strategy was sound then and remains sound now. The difference is that now I know who in my organization opposed it and why." "Kim is still alive," Li Mei said bluntly. "Still gathering loyalists. How do you propose to consolidate power when half your people think mercy is weakness?" "By proving them wrong," he leaned forward. "By demonstrating that strategic peace with you frees resources to crush Kim's rebellion faster than continued war on two fronts. By showing that strength isn't about who can inflict the most violence. It's about who can achieve objectives with the least waste. And if your people don't accept that philosophy, then they're welcome to join Kim in exile or death. I'm done pretending unity matters more than direction. The organization either evolves or it dies." Silence fell. I could feel the weight of calculation happening. "I have one condition," Li Mei said finally. "If we agree to this treaty, I want insurance that you won't be assassinated again. Because if you die, whoever replaces you will likely tear up this agreement. So I need to know your succession plan is sound." His hand found mine under the table. "I'm restructuring my organization's leadership, creating a council system instead of a single autocrat. Key decisions will require consensus. If I die, the treaty survives." "Who sits on this council?" "Jay, because he understands tactical operations. 3 lieutenants who've proven loyalty. And," he paused, "my intelligence coordinator, someone who knows the city's infrastructure well enough to ensure our activities don't harm the communities we profit from." Li Mei's eyes found me. "The courier. The former courier," I corrected. "Currently, the person who knows how goods and information move through this city better than anyone in this room. That knowledge is valuable enough to earn a seat at the table." "You're not qualified," Li Mei said, but there was curiosity in her tone. "I'm differently qualified. Every person on his proposed council thinks like a criminal. I think like someone who lives in the same neighborhoods your operations affect. That perspective prevents the kind of strategic blindness that leads to civilian casualties." I met Li Mei's gaze. "You want insurance he won't be assassinated? I'm part of that insurance. Because I'm the one person on the council who has no interest in taking his position, no ambition to lead. I'm there purely for strategic intelligence, which makes me the most reliable vote he has." Understanding flickered in Li Mei's expression. "She's smart. I like her. She's terrifying," he said, and there was pride in his voice. "She walked into Mikhail's warehouse alone to deliver footage that could have gotten her killed. She's made every wrong decision from a survival perspective and somehow turned them into strategic advantages." Li Mei was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, genuinely smiled, and extended her hand across the table. "All right, Mr. Nam, you have your treaty. Territory boundaries as proposed, non-aggression pacts, shared intelligence on external threats, 6-month trial period to ensure both sides honor the terms." He shook her hand, his expression carefully neutral, but his relief palpable. "You won't regret this." "I'd better not. Because if I do, I'll personally ensure you regret it more." They finalized details for another hour. By the time they left the restaurant, dawn was painting the sky. The city was waking up, oblivious to the fact that a war had just ended. Jay drove them back to the penthouse in silence that felt lighter, cautiously hopeful. When they arrived, he excused himself, leaving me and him alone in the expansive space. He moved to the windows, standing silhouette against the morning light. I joined him, close enough that their shoulders brushed. "It's not over," he said quietly. "Kim is still out there. So is the councilman. This treaty doesn't end the war, it just refocuses it." "I know. But now you're fighting on one front instead of two. That's your influence." He turned to face me, backlit by sunrise. "A month ago, I would have tried to crush the Eastern Syndicate while simultaneously hunting internal traitors. Would have bled my organization dry. But you walked into this with courier logic, with route optimization and resource management. Are you saying I've corrupted you with efficiency? I'm saying you've saved me from becoming the monster everyone expected." His hand came up to cut my face. "You saved my life in that river. You've saved it a dozen times since. And I don't know how to thank you except to promise I'll spend whatever time we have trying to deserve what you've given me." My breath caught. "I don't want your gratitude. I want your partnership, your trust, your willingness to keep choosing peace even when violence would be easier. You're asking me to be better than I am. I'm asking you to be who you wanted to be before Kim and his friend decided that wanting peace made you weak." His other hand found my waist, pulling me closer. "And what do you want for yourself?" The question should have been simple. A month ago, it would have been, "I want to matter," I said finally. "I spent years being invisible, and then I jumped into that river and suddenly I mattered. My choices mattered, and I don't want to go back to being invisible, even if being seen is dangerous." "You could never be invisible, not to me. I mean, I want to keep doing work that matters. Keep using my skills to make this city safer. Keep being part of something bigger. And I want," my voice dropped. "I want you, want this, want whatever we're building even though it's dangerous and complicated." His thumb traced my lower lip. "It doesn't have to end badly. We could make it work. Navigate the danger together." "And love?" I supplied, my heart racing. I was going to say salvation, but love works too. The kiss was inevitable. His mouth was warm and certain. My hands fisted in his suit jacket, pulling him closer despite the wound beneath the fabric. He made a sound low in his throat and deepened the kiss until the world narrowed to just this. His mouth on mine, his hands mapping the curve of my spine, the morning light painting them in gold. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead against mine. "I should let you rest. You need sleep and safety." "What I need," I said, my voice rough, "is to stop pretending this is just partnership. What I need is honesty about what we're doing here." "What are we doing here?" "Falling. Fighting it. Falling anyway." I pulled back enough to see his full face, to trace the healing scar at his temple. "I don't know if this is real or if it's just trauma bonding. But I know I can't keep pretending I don't feel it." He caught my hand, pressed a kiss to my palm. "It's real. It's been real since you cut through those zip ties and dragged me from that sinking car. You chose me before you knew anything about me except that I was drowning, and I've been choosing you back every moment since. Even when it's dangerous? Especially then." His hands framed my face. "Stay with me. Not as my intelligence coordinator, though you're that. Stay as the woman I can't stop falling for. The one who makes me want to be better. The one who looks at me like I'm salvation instead of sin." I thought about the river. About jumping in without hesitation. About every choice since that had led to this moment. "Yes," I said. "I want that. Want you. Want this impossible, dangerous, completely insane future we're building. I choose it. I choose you. Deliberately and completely." The kiss that followed was different from all the others. Not desperate with crisis or gentle with restraint, but certain with decision. His hands mapped my body with deliberate attention. My fingers found the buttons of his shirt, and this time he didn't stop me. Clothes fell away in stages. His suit jacket dropped. My dress unzipped and pooled at my feet. Each revelation was answered with touch. His fingers tracing the scar on my forearm, my palm pressed over the bandages covering his bullet graze, both of them cataloging the evidence of what they'd survived to reach this moment. When they finally came together in the vast bed with its view of the city, it was with the slow deliberation of people who'd waited long enough. He held me like I was simultaneously precious and dangerous, his touch reverent but possessive. I met him with equal intensity, claiming as much as being claimed. They moved together in the soft morning light, their bodies finding rhythm that felt both new and inevitable. Every touch was a conversation, every kiss a promise, every gasp a confirmation that this was real. Not crisis bonding or adrenaline, but genuine connection forged through shared danger. Afterward, they lay tangled in sheets, my head on his chest, his fingers trailing patterns on my spine. The city glittered beyond the windows, oblivious to the fact that two people had just chosen each other in the face of every logical reason not to. "I love you," he said into the quiet. "I don't know if I'm supposed to say it this soon, but I love you. Have since you refused to run. Maybe before that. Maybe since you cut through zip ties with a tire iron. You saved my life and then you stayed, and I've been falling ever since." I pressed a kiss over his heart. "I love you too. Against all logic and self-preservation. I love you." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other, the city breathing below them and war waiting in the morning, but for now, for this one perfect moment, they had peace. 3 months later, the coffee shop on 5th and Morrison had become my unofficial office. I sat at a corner table with my laptop and encrypted phone, coordinating intelligence operations that ranged from territory monitoring to supply chain logistics. The courier company I used to work for had no idea. Their former employee now ran an information network that made their delivery system look amateur. Mr. Kim, Park Jin-woo, had disappeared after that night. Either dead by Kim's hand for failure, or in hiding. I missed our conversations even though I now knew they'd all been reconnaissance. There was something oddly comforting about having enemies who were honest about their intentions. My phone buzzed. Maya's name appeared on the screen, and I answered with a smile. "Hey, little sister. How's the semester going?" "Good. I aced my calculus midterm. And I met someone. His name's James. He's really sweet." Maya's voice was bright with uncomplicated happiness. "How are you? Still doing the delivery coordinator thing?" "Something like that." I had explained my new career as logistics coordinator for a private security firm. Not entirely a lie, just strategic truth presentation. "I'm good. Really good, actually. You sound different." "Happy. Is there someone?" "There is." I glanced at the SUV parked outside the coffee shop, at his silhouette visible through the window. He was on a call, probably coordinating the next move in the ongoing war with Kim's faction. 3 months of strategic strikes and careful positioning, slowly but steadily winning ground. His name is Haneul. He's complicated and intense and absolutely not someone you'd expect me to end up with. But he's good for me. Makes me better. I want to meet him. Soon, I promised. After some work, things settle down. Like civil war. Like the conspiracy trials that were slowly dismantling the councilman's network. Like the peace treaty implementation that required constant monitoring. They talked for a few more minutes before Maya had to get to class. I ended the call and gathered my laptop, preparing to join him for their next appointment, a territory negotiation with a local business association that needed to understand how the new criminal landscape affected their operations. He met me at the SUV door, his hand finding mine automatically. 3 months together and the touch still felt electric, still carried the weight of everything they'd survived to reach this point. "Ready?" he asked. "Always." They drove through the city that had almost destroyed them both, past the bridge where this had all started, through neighborhoods that were slowly stabilizing as the treaty's benefits became apparent. The Eastern Syndicate had honored their agreement. Li Mei sent monthly reports on shared intelligence and cooperated on external threats. The peace was holding. Kim's rebellion was failing. Slowly, expensively, but inevitably. His ideology couldn't compete with results, and Haneul's strategic approach was generating profits that made violence look inefficient by comparison. Loyalists were defecting regularly, tired of fighting for a vision of the past when the future was already arriving. At a stoplight, he turned to me with an expression that held question and certainty in equal measure. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what comes after we win. After Kim's either dead or exiled and the organization is stable. About what kind of life we build when we're not constantly fighting for survival. And I want something normal. Or as normal as we can manage. Actual dates that don't involve treaty negotiations. Dinners where we talk about something other than territory disputes. Maybe even. He paused, choosing words carefully. Maybe even thinking about futures that include things like permanence. Commitment beyond strategic partnership. My breath caught. Are you proposing? Not yet. But I'm proposing the idea of eventually proposing. Testing the waters. Seeing if you've thought about the same things. I have, I admitted. Thought about what it means to build a life with someone whose life includes organized crime and territorial control. Wondered if we could have normal things. Marriage. Maybe kids someday. A relationship that exists outside the war we're fighting. And I stopped, turned to face him fully. I think we can, because we've already built something impossible. Everything else is just details. The light turned green. His smile was bright and unexpected and completely genuine. Details. I like that. They drove on toward their meeting, toward the future they were building one strategic decision at a time. Behind them, the city stretched into distance, the same streets I had navigated on my delivery bike, now transformed into territory I helped protect and manage. Ahead lay negotiations and conflicts and the endless work of maintaining peace while fighting war. But between them, in the space of clasped hands and shared glances, lived something neither violence nor strategy could touch. Something that had started in river water and zip ties and grown into partnership that transcended every boundary they'd crossed to reach it. I looked at the man beside me. Crime boss, strategist, the person I'd pulled from drowning and somehow fallen into orbit around. He met my eyes, and in his gaze I saw a reflection of my own transformation. The courier who'd kept her head down was gone, replaced by someone who walked into warehouses alone and negotiated with enemies and chose danger over invisibility. No regrets? He asked quietly. Not one, I said and meant it. The SUV turned onto the main avenue, merging into traffic. Just another vehicle in the city's endless flow. Just two people building something impossible in the spaces between legal and criminal, between safety and danger, between the life I used to have and the one I'd chosen instead. I'd jumped into that river without hesitation, had cut through zip ties and dragged a drowning man to shore and changed both their lives irreversibly, and given the choice to do it all again, knowing everything that followed, every danger and betrayal and moment of terror, I'd still jump. Because some people were worth drowning for. Some futures were worth fighting for. Some loves were worth every risk and sacrifice and impossible choice that brought them into being. And this, the man beside me, the city around them, the dangerous, complicated, absolutely insane life they were building together. This was worth everything I'd given up to reach it. I love you, I said. Not for the first time, but with the same certainty as always. His hand tightened on mine. I love you too, my courier, my partner, my salvation, he said, and smiled. Always. The city swallowed them back into its rhythm. Above, the sky was clearing after days of rain, revealing blue that promised better weather ahead. Around them, life continued. Civilians going about their days, unaware of the criminal underworld that operated in shadows and secured their ignorant peace. And in the SUV, two people who'd saved each other in every way possible drove toward whatever came next, together, deliberately, completely certain that whatever battles waited, whatever dangers emerged, whatever impossible choices the future demanded, they'd face it all the way they'd faced everything else, by jumping in without hesitation, by choosing each other over safety, by building something beautiful and terrible and utterly unbreakable in the spaces between violence and mercy. The war with Kim would end eventually. The organization would stabilize. The city would continue its endless transformation. But what we had built, forged in river water and sealed with trust earned through survival, that would endure, because I'd pulled him from drowning once, and he'd spent every moment since pulling me from the invisible, unremarkable life I'd settled for. We'd saved each other, and we'd keep saving each other, every day, in every way that mattered. That was the promise. That was the future. That was what love looked like when it was born from violence and chose to become something better. The SUV disappeared into traffic. The city breathed on. And somewhere in its depths, a former delivery girl and a crime boss, wrote the next chapter of an impossible story that had started with one choice to jump, to save, to stay, and would continue as long as they kept choosing each other. Deliberately, fearlessly, completely.